Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, President Biden is getting into campaign mode, but he's taken kind of an interesting stance in how he's going to go out there and help Democrats defend their majorities this fall. Are we seeing a lot of him on the campaign trail with these candidates, or how exactly is he going about it?
Yeah, of course, the candidates, a president's moves on the campaign trail are always closely scrutinized, whatever the president's doing, people are noticing, and people are noticing that he is not doing a whole lot of direct campaigning. He has not been to Georgia, for example. I don't believe he's been to Nevada, Colorado, these other places with closely contested Senate and governor's races. He was supposed to go to Florida ahead of the hurricane. He was going to meet with Charlie Crist, the Democratic candidate for governor there, but Val Demings, one of their big Senate candidate, was not going to be there. And so instead, what he's done is done a lot of Democratic National Committee fundraisers, and he's basically stuck to the Washington, D.C. and New York City area. So there's been a lot of attention about that. Well, why isn't he going out and campaigning with Democrats who are down ballot from him? Their strategy seems to be more about he's going out and doing, of course, fundraisers with the DNC and then talking about what bills they pass. They did have a lot of success getting bills passed over the last 6 months, kind of the end of this Congress. So they're talking about that rather than doing campaigning. As far as why he's not campaigning more directly, probably something to do with the fact that his approval ratings are still stuck pretty low in the low 40s.
Right. So it may be that the balance that they're trying to strike is keep talking about the big themes that motivate Democratic voters to turn out, whether that's ultra MAGA, whether that's the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade, whether that's all the legislation the president signed, but don't have photo ops with candidates in races where most undecided voters don't approve of Biden's performance in office.
Right, exactly. Some of these states, Georgia, I'm sure, and some of the other ones, his approval ratings are even lower. So candidates don't necessarily want to be seen giving Biden a big bear hug on the front page of the local paper. They're talking about the bills they passed, saying they've created jobs, things like that. They are talking about abortion and things like that, but not doing a big stump speech campaign rally.
And also, as you mentioned, a lot of the places where the president has gone are pretty safe places for a Democrat to go. Now, in a national cable news environment, everybody sees everything. It's not quite the same as it used to be when you had to go to Indianapolis to be covered by the local TV networks. But he doesn't seem to be venturing out into very many places, Florida maybe being an exception, and the hurricane kind of mandated that, where you'd think that Democrats would have any concerns.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you raised there. And because, as you said, most people get their news today from national sources and from cable news and things like that. They're not watching the local news as much as they used to, so they can still try to get their message out by having Biden do campaign stops wherever and in safe territories. Usually, like I said, he's been in the New York and D.C. areas a lot lately. But I think it still does matter where he goes. I asked actually a strategist a few weeks ago how much it did matter anymore, basically the question you're asking me, if he shows up to a state where a candidate is campaigning. He said that it does matter. People do want to see if he's been there or not, if he's in fact popular, and him being there will help. One example he always raises is that Republicans who are big on the southern border and that issue, the only thing they talk about, is that Biden, he hasn't been there.
To the border,
and Kamala Harris saying has only been there once. They raise that issue quite a bit, that he hasn't come and visited. So that does show that it matters, where he is.
So one of the pronouncements that the president has made that got a lot of attention was that the pandemic is over. They've since qualified that and walked it back to some extent. But there's always been this criticism of the administration that pandemic is over when that's politically beneficial. Pandemic is still going on when they need to use the pandemic to justify something they're doing. So there's now been a latest form of pushback against the vaccine mandates in the military. Talk a little bit about how that's become a controversy again.
Yeah. The pandemic has been over and not over at the same time for it seems like about 6 months, depending on what policy you're talking about. The White House dropped its mask mandate back in March. They've had a number of different mandates that have been struck down by courts, a lot of vaccine mandates. But what you're talking about here is, yes, the military. The Supreme Court did say that the military, as a government agency, can enforce vaccine mandates. Biden said a few weeks ago now that the pandemic is over, and yet the military still has that vaccine mandate. So what happened a few weeks ago was that Biden thanked a member of the Marine Corps, I believe it was, who made like a heroic rescue after
Coast Guard, I
Hurricane-
believe.
The Coast Guard, okay, thank you for the correction of the Coast Guard, for making a heroic rescue after Hurricane Ian. As it turns out, that military member is not vaccinated
Right.
and will actually be fired within a few weeks for not being vaccinated. So again, this issue comes up, well, you said yourself that the pandemic is over.
Right.
Why is this happening? So there's that conflict, kind of refuses to die, it seems like.
Well, they'll have to give it their best shot. Thank you, Haisten.
Absolutely.
You can read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.